us start. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. We didn't get enough time to do reflections last week, so we will do the reflections of the last week talk now. Okay, so what do you think are the reasons for the Buddha to attain enlightenment despite all the challenges? You did see what he went through. You did see how difficult those situations were. When he started off with the serious meditation, withdrawing from sensual pleasures and stopping his breath, and then clench his teeth, and with the wind coming through the ears, with the head exploding like an earthquake, and with the belly, all the winds, and then the body go into extreme heat. And then he started off with very little food and down to skeleton and bones, and his spines were like what, beads. Yeah. And when he touches front, he can feel his backbone. When he touches backbone, he can feel his front. When he want to pee, when he want to poop, he fell over. So that was all the difficult practices that he's gone through, and he eventually found out that aesthetic life wasn't really conducive to total liberation from sufferings. So eventually he gave up. So he sat down underneath in a good place. He thought this is very conducive to practice. So he sat down in a place, and then he attained those three knowledges, right? So that was a really rough summary of what he went through. So we actually studied that in the last few little chapters. So what do you think were the reasons for the Buddha to attain the enlightenment despite all these difficulties? Why did he have to go through all this? Why? It's your reflections, it's not mine. The mic is yours, it's on the floor. Have you gone back to reflect on this, Versa?
Maybe he needed to experience what the truth is not.
Okay, that's good. You mean reaching the truth? That was not the practice to reach the truth. That's good. Very good. You don't have any idea, okay? He needed to discover the middle way. Very good. Paul?
He needed to show man that what, like he was the Buddha, but a man, he proved a man has to go through.
An ordinary human being.
We're ordinary, he's ordinary.
Yeah. To go through all those.
This is not what to do.
This is not what to do.
And this is what to do.
This is what to do.
Good. So it's not like a God who came and said this.
Yes. You listen to me, and I'll carry you on my shoulders.
And he wanted to experience.
He wanted
experience it so that he could, be informed and tell his people.
Very good.
He can't really talk with knowledge unless he's gone through it.
Exactly.
He can relate to it.
Yeah. So we can relate to his teachings, right? What else?
He just needed to look at reality the way that it was, the way that it is.
Yes. Look at the reality the way it is. Yes. Okay. What else? You were all correct. Those were really good reasons. Are you expecting? Are you expecting something from me? You're looking at me. You're all right. You were all correct because you said the right thing. It has to be related. It has to relate to humankind. It has to go through the experience. And he taught the middle path, and he showed that going through the two extremes is really not the path. And because deep down in him, there is a compassion that he wanted to find a way to help suffering people, beings to come out from sufferings. And because of that compassion, don't you think he knows this way? I think he did. I think he did already. But he went through it so that he showed us he actually went through it. And it did not work. Trust me. But because of his great compassion, so he put himself in that situation. Just like firemen, they know going into a place on fire was very dangerous. They could lose their life anytime, right? But they have that will to save people. They have that will to save. They have that ethics to go into the fire, into the flame, right? So I think that is one of the reasons too. Okay, so all right, good. So among the three knowledges, the third knowledge of the destruction of the things is the crucial point to total liberation. So what are the qualities of this third knowledge? Look up in the book. What are the qualities? Nine qualities. Nine qualities. You don't know? Want me to tell you? Okay. Page 66. The book will tell you. Page 66, passage 42. When my mind was thus concentrated, purified, bright, unblemished, rid of imperfection, malleable, worldly, steady, and attained to imperturbability. These are the qualities of the third knowledge, isn't it? Right? Because of the mind being concentrated, because of the mind being pure, because of the mind being bright, because the mind because of the mind untainted and blemished, because of the mind completely perfect and malleable. Like, you know what is malleable, right? It can be extended, flexible, and worldly. Worldly, you know what does that mean? I thought that is more malleable than worldly.
Yeah, being able to carry.
Like wielding a sword? Maybe?
Yeah. Okay, what does that mean? To hold up, and to be able to use, to be suitable. I look up the definition. Okay. So worldly and steady, so and attain to imperturbability. So imperturbability, we all know, is like cool-headed, grounded, and very stable and steady, right? So these are the qualities of one who actually has attained the third knowledge. so so these are the qualities of the third knowledge. Because of that enlightenment, these qualities naturally come. You don't have to actually cultivate, intentionally cultivate. Because of the enlightenment, attainment of the enlightenment, these qualities are naturally there. Do we have any of these qualities? Really? No?
To a certain extent.
You do. Come on, be more positive. Hi? You've been studying the Dhamma, practicing for so long. Give yourself a pat. Moments. Yeah. Moments that you have these qualities. Yes, of course. You have to have faith. Internal faith, remember? Last week, I think it was last week or the week before, it says internal faith. You do need to have that internal faith. The internal faith means that you have that Buddha nature in there, but it's just masked, and you can reveal it by removing the dust. Yeah. So we do have those qualities, but moments, and they don't last very long. And we constantly forget to strengthen them. Actually, we constantly do everything to weaken them, right? Instead of strengthening them. So we need to be very mindful all the time. And are we prepared to develop any of these qualities to a higher extent? We should, right?
Oh,
Yeah. Good. We should, yeah. I mean, and we should, as a practitioner, not just as a Buddhist. Remember, we are not just a Buddhist. A Buddhist is somebody who takes the teachings as a sort of like a religious faith, and the teachings of the Buddha is not just for the Buddhist, because the Buddhas are teachings the truth of existence, and the truth of existence applies to everybody, whether one believes in his teachings or one practices his teachings or not. It applies. You are subjected to change, whether you believe in the Buddha's teachings or not. You're subjected to change, and you are conditioned, whether you call yourself a Buddhist or not. So don't we are a Buddhist, and also we are a practitioner. The most important thing is we are practicing his teachings, and that's very important, because we are what? Talking the talk, walking the talk. That's very important. We are a walkie-talkie. Walking, talking, walkie-talkie. Okay, so be a walkie-talkie of the Buddhist teachings, not just the talkie. Okay, so all right, good. Now we go into the ancient city, what we have read just now. So this is actually a simile, okay? And this passage said, when now will an escape be discerned from this suffering headed by aging and death? So he was sitting, he was meditating, and he said, months before my enlightenment, when I was still a bodhisattva, that means he hasn't actually attained his Sammasambuddha yet. Sammasambuddha yet. He was just a bodhisattva. This is a bodhisattva. He is a bodhisattva. Guan Yin Pusa is a bodhisattva. There are Buddhas But there are, all Buddhas not necessarily are Samma Sambuddha. So remember when we first started reading, we say Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Samma Sambuddha. Not all Buddhas are Samma Sambuddha yet. Okay, so Samma Sambuddha are the ones who actually attained his enlightenment by himself for the compassion of all beings. And Buddhas relied a lot on others' teachings to become Buddha. You will become a Buddha. Maitreya will become a Buddha. Kisiddhagarbha Bodhisattva could become a Buddha. Okay, and Amitabha Buddha, when he retired, Gwampusat will become the Buddha in the Western paradise, or in the Amitabha Pure Land. So it's not a promotion. It's not a promotion. It's a natural path of progress in the spiritual practice. Okay. So he said, yet before I fully enlightened, it occurred to me, this world has fallen into trouble. This world has fallen into trouble. That means this world is suffering. In that it is born, ages, and dies. So it changes, right? It arises, it stays, ages. It stays like us. We were born, then we stay 20 years old, 70 years old, 90 years old, 120 years old. So we age, that means we stay in that aging process. And then we pass away. And it's reborn. So this cycle is called, we call this samsara, right? A cycle of birth and death, constant birth and death, and never be able to find an exit out. And is there an exit out? He said, when now will an escape be discerned from this suffering headed by aging and death? When there will be an escape? When there will be an exit? So when what does exit come to be? And then he said, monks, it occurred to me, aging and death come to be. When will aging and death come to be? Is conditioned. When there is birth, aging and death comes to be. When there is birth, aging and death come to be. So when we were born, we're bound to age, we're bound to die. There's the conditions. The conditions of birth lead to aging and death. So what does he talk about in this whole chapter, the ancient city? So by what is aging and death conditions? So it is birth. So he said breakthrough by wisdom. So he had attained a breakthrough by wisdom is when there is birth, aging and death comes to be. Because birth actually conditioned aging and death. And aging and death has birth as its conditions. So throughout these 2 pages, he talk about this consciousness, he talk about clinging, craving, feeling, contact, and the 6 sense bases and everything. So you are all very senior students. You have been studying this for a few years. You should know what he was talking about. What was he talking about? The 12 links of dependent origination. Very good. The 12 links of dependent origination. I'm not going to go into detail in this because in later chapter we have to go into detail in this, so I just want to finish this chapter as the bringer of light, and it's not talking about life and rebirth. So this is the dependent origination. So what he talked about is normally this is at 12 o'clock. Okay, this is 12 o'clock and 1 o'clock, and then you go on. So 12 links. So because of ignorance, there is this formation. And because of formation, then there will be consciousness. So this is the condition for formation. Formation is the conditions for consciousness, and the consciousness is the formation for name and form. And when this name and form exists, then there will be the six sense doors: the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the smell, the the body touch, and the mind. With the six sense doors, then we will, because the eyes can see objects, the ears can hear sounds, then there will be contact. When the eyes see an object, there is a contact. So the eye will see, oh, this is a round thing, this is a round, black and white. It doesn't really know black and white. It knows color, but it doesn't know what kind of color. Remember, always bear in mind the senses do not know what color, what form. It knows this is like this or this is like this, and it doesn't distinguish a triangle from a circle. Remember, okay? And what distinguishes a triangle from a circle? Which part of the mind distinguishes? Good. Perception. Sanya. Remember? Sanya. Okay. So I tell you, Sanya is not here. Sanya is not here. Sanya is in the where? In the five aggregates, five khandhas. Yeah. So when we talk about the five khandhas, we'll discuss that in detail. So after contact, then there will be a feeling. So contact is the condition for the feeling, and feeling is the condition for the craving, because I like it, I don't like it, right? And then, or craving or aversion. And then with this craving, that we start to cling on. I want this, I want more, I want it to stay. So clinging. When there is this clinging, we become a person that wants this to stay. So that is a different person than before, right? So you start off with no clinging. Now you see a piece of cheesecake and you say, oh, I want that cheesecake. So you are a different person already, a person who wants that piece of cheesecake. So it becoming, okay? And then because of that becoming, there will be a new birth. The person who wants that piece of cheesecake is the different person than the one before, isn't it? Right? So that is the birth. So we are just talking about this lifetime. But these 12 links of dependent origination actually spans over how many lifetimes? Eons, yeah. Past, present, and future. Past, present, and future. Infinite lifetimes. Okay? So that's why when there is birth conditioned, aging and death. And then after we die, what do? We take birth again. Why do we take birth again? Because we are so ignorant. We don't understand. We don't leave the cycles. The more we study the Dhamma, the more we understand why my life is like this, right? Yeah, you do. And you don't blame others anymore. It's my fault. It's totally my fault to be like this, right? So he went briefly into this, and the 12 links of dependent origination needs to be studied in detail all the time. And I'm sure you don't mind to go over it over again, Nick, when that chapters come, because it's nice to be reinforced. It's nice to actually hear it over and over again, because every time you will have a little bit more insight. Okay, so but we won't go into detail, but we just know that this is the idea of what he was talking about. So with this 12 links of dependent origination, this is the one of the really core teaching of the Buddha, and one of the very important thinking of the Buddha's teachings. And because of these 12 links of dependent origination, our existence is not being created by others, right? It's created by ourselves. And so there is no such thing as a creator, God. And because of this whole idea, because of this whole thinking. And you look at this whole cycle, it's actually very, very true and very, very correct. And look at this in the inner circle, arising and cessation of dukkha. In case you don't understand what is dukkha means, it means sufferings, miseries, dissatisfactions, unhappiness. And the one on the left is, with the arising of this, that arises. And with the cessation of this, that ceases. That is the this is the whole idea of the arising of us, of the arising of every inanimate existence. Inanimate existence, because there is wood, there is glue, there is paint, there is money, there is tree, and there is a carpenter, and there is somebody to go and buy this. Because of all these arise, that's why there is this stick here. This arises. And when this gets too old, breaks down, the wood cracked, and the paint faded, and it doesn't make a sound anymore, then we have to throw it away, or bury it, or burn it. Then those ceases, and this ceases. And those cease, this ceases, right? So that's what the whole idea of dependent origination. So our existence doesn't depend on a creator God. Our coming about depends on our own actions, our own karma. You have to believe in this, otherwise you don't need to study the Buddha's teachings. Okay, so he actually make a simile. Sorry.
So, if there's no God, then of course there'd be no soul. And so, does Buddha teach other options as for the cause of life? Like some people believe there's a force, a life force. What does Buddha say?
Consciousness.
Consciousness? Don't jump to conclusions, right?
The consciousness reborn.
This consciousness,
Yeah.
Or is it a greater consciousness?
Our own consciousness.
Our own consciousness.
Not the brain one.
No. Okay.
The mental one. Yeah, the consciousness.
Which one?
Mental one, the mind.
The mind.
Our existence, this human existence, make up of two parts, the physical and the mental part. The physical part is this body,
Right.
okay, and the mental part. And the mental part, there are four faculties, okay. There is perception, there is feeling, there is formation, and there is consciousness. And
So consciousness would apply to all creatures?
everything,
Everything.
including a worm. A worm has animes. He talks about animes, anime things, okay, or anime existence. All right, a dog has consciousness, a cat has consciousness, and a worm has consciousness, an ant has consciousness,
Right.
but different than our mankind consciousness.
Yeah.
Right?
They can't
They-
seek Buddhahood.
Yeah, because they cannot, they can hear, but they cannot understand,
Right.
and they cannot practice. That's the most important thing, is because they cannot practice. But we have the mind to practice. That's why human life is so precious. Human life is superior, not in the sense that we are superior being, but
that
we
we
are
can
superior
practice.
because we can practice. Okay?
Thank you.
Good. So he actually used an ancient city as a simile to actually tell us about the ancient path that actually many spiritual saints have gone through. So he said it's just like a man wandering through a forest would see an ancient path and an ancient road traveled upon by people in the past. And he would follow it, he walked on it, and he followed it and would see an ancient city. This ancient city is beautiful, very delightful, with parks, with groves, ponds, and ramparts, a delightful place. Then the man would go back and inform the king or a royal minister, and he would say, "Sir, know that while wandering through the forest, I saw an ancient path, an ancient road traveled upon by people in the past. I followed it and saw an ancient city, an ancient capital that has been inhabited by people in the past." Then the king or the royal minister would renovate the city, and sometime later that city becomes successful, prosperous, well populated, filled with people, attain to growth and expansion. So he told the king, and so what does it mean by this ancient path? I read this all. Oops. So this ancient path, that means Buddha took, he symbolized himself as this person walking across the forest. And he saw this path, this ancient path. This ancient path was actually walked by many perfect enlightened ones in the past. That means Buddhas. What do you think he was talking about? Which path he was talking about? The Noble Eightfold Path, very good. With right view, right intention, right speech, right actions, right livelihood, right efforts, right mindfulness, and right concentration, as is different stages or different practices in this Eightfold Noble Path. And then he said, I follow the path, and I have directly known aging and death, its origin, its cessation, and the way leading to its cessation. And this is the Four Noble Truth. So, the path, this ancient path, encompasses the Eightfold Noble Path, and because of practicing the Eightfold Noble Path, or because of understanding the Four Noble Truth, or experiencing the Four Noble Truth, then we choose to walk on this Eightfold Noble Path towards liberation from dukkha. Right? And so here he said, I told the king, and the king actually renovate the city, and sometime later the city becomes successful and prosperous. So what does that mean? He told the king.
Is that like him teaching?
Yes. Yes, you see, these chapters are all interconnected. The next section is the decision to teach. Yeah, teaching. So I have explained them to the monks, nuns, the male lay followers, and the lay female followers. Remember that last few lines on page 69 on that passage? Having directly known them. That means this man who walked across the forest, he directly know them, and he explained them to the monk, the king. The king developed it. So he explained them to the monks, the nuns, the followers, and they walk on this, and they become successful and prosperous. Right? So the spiritual life has been successful and prosperous, well proclaimed among devas and humans. You still with me? You are still okay? Not bored yet? Okay. All right. Let's see. Okay. Then, the decision to teach. That's subchapter 4. And he said, oh, okay, I consider this Dhamma I have attained is very profound, so deep. And even for me, it's very hard to see and very difficult to understand, even for the Buddha himself. And it is when he actually started to see it, he started to understand it, he found such peace. And then he said here, unattainable by mere reasoning. This, I really need to emphasize on this to all of you. Because in the West, this reasoning quality is very strong in your heads. Yeah, right. That's why it's so difficult for people to actually open their hearts, open their mind to actually listen to the Buddha's teachings. Don't let alone practicing. Just listening is very difficult. Because one is it's so close. The mind is so close. It's what should I say? Not open enough. The heart is not open enough to actually explore new teachings. And you folks like a lot of reasoning and scientific proof. Yeah. Intellectualizing. And that actually, sometimes, I'm not saying that they are not good qualities. They are wonderful qualities. But sometimes they could be hindrances. They could be. And, but, I mean, you are open-minded because you are sitting here right now. So, but yet I see that those are really very strong qualities in the people of the West. Yeah, and but the Buddha said is enlightenment or liberation from sufferings is unattainable by mere reasoning. So does it mean that you need to believe it blindly? No. Then, by what? Experiencing, yes. You read it, then you experience, then you believe it, right? Okay, so that's what he means. Not by just mere reasoning, and it's very subtle, very, very subtle, and it's only be experienced by the wise. So whatever that you experience, whatever teachings that you can experience and you understand after experiencing, you are a wise person. So you are wiser and wiser. You become wiser and wiser. Don't what do you call it? Undermine yourself. Don't undermine yourself. Every day you could be wiser because you're experiencing more and more about his teachings. And you understand more and more then you become wiser and wiser. And he said further, this Dhamma I have attained is like this. And this population is never going to be able to understand because they delight in attachment. We all agree with this, don't we? Very much delighted in attachment and also take delight in attachment. Right? What's the difference between these two? English teachers. Delights in attachment and take delights in attachment.
Maybe the first one is that there are delights in an attachment, and the second one is we are drawn to that.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
access it.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. That's good. That's what he meant. And then rejoices in attachment. Anyway, everything is because we love attachments, right? We rejoices in being attached. We rejoices in clinging because we don't know. We don't know when those things that we cling to disappear. We know, but we don't want to believe. And we know, and we believe, but we forget. Right? We constantly forget. So we start to become sorrow, we lament, we become angry, we become depressed, right? Because we forget. So he said it is hard for them to see this truth. I hope he's not talking about us. Okay. And the truth of conditionality and dependent origination. It is very difficult to understand. Dependent origination is really difficult to understand. But when you start to have a glimpse of understanding in this cycle, it's a great insight. It's actually one very wonderful teaching to be used at times of difficulties. Really helpful. And the truth of the stilling of all formations, that means stop all formations, stop all future formations. Right? Stilling of all formations, that means stop all the sankhara. Right? And relinquishing of all acquisitions. So we let go. And the destructions of craving, dispassion, cessations, and nibbana. So eventually you come to reach to a state of total cessation. Total cessation. So, and then there were two stanzas, came to him spontaneously. Remember we talk about the wood with the sap, those three similes, remember? No? The dry wood, the wet wood in the ocean. You remember now? Okay, good. Okay, those also came spontaneously. The word spontaneously actually has a great meaning in here. Guess what? Why? Insight. It just comes naturally. You You don't need to have any intention to create it. It just comes naturally. And those are the two stances. First is enough with teaching the Dhamma that even I found hard to reach, for it will never be perceived by those who live in lust and hate. So that's the first stanza. And then the second stanza. He said, those died in lust, wrapped in darkness, will never discern this abstruse Dhamma, which goes against the worldly stream, subtle, deep, and difficult to see. So, considering this, he said, my mind inclined to inaction. That means no action, rather than going to teach the Dhamma. Why? Why?
That would be too difficult for us to, as human being
To understand, to comprehend. Yeah. Yeah, because we don't have that kind of faculties to understand and comprehend. But you do understand and comprehend now.
But we forget.
As soon as we leave here.
Yes, it's true. So he knows after he attained this profound Dhamma, he knows how difficult it is for those who are defiled, who are constantly living in afflictions, to actually to understand, to remember, and to practice the Dhamma. So, but also, why he did this is not because he is not compassionate, but out of veneration, out of respect, we need to request for the Dhamma. So he wanted, the inaction is he wanted somebody to come and request for the Dhamma. And who did come? Devas, Brahma. Okay? So we'll stop here. That's enough for tonight. This book is wonderful, isn't it? How did you find this book now? Because you have done this reading yourself too. You have done this on Saturday study group too.
Sometimes it's very encouraging because I remember bits and pieces, and I remember talking about it with the others in the group, and so I feel like every time I do it, I get a little bit more from it. So it is encouraging. Yeah.
Good. Saturday group people?
I find it. I think all the 2 years, or is it 3
2
years?
years, yes. 3 years. Yeah. Oh, wow.
I guess we miss a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot deeper than.
Yeah. That's why I know this is difficult. I know that's why people come and go. People don't stay because it's so boring. It seems to be so dry, but to me it's not dry at all. I'm sure it's not dry to some of you, that's why you stay. But it's really not just mere words. There's so much depth into the words, into these passages. There's so much depth in it. That's why I like to go into depth like this rather than just mere reading it or just talking very on the surface. I mean, I'm not good enough to go deeper yet, but I find it's actually very, very, very interesting to. I mean, I've read this book for so many years. I think 10 years ago I started teaching this book. I think I started using this when we were still in the old hall, when the old building was still there. That was 10 years ago, I remember. Terry, right? I think so, yeah. So, and now I pick it up again and do it again, and it's very different again. So trust me, every time you read, every time you actually listen to it again, you will feel different because you keep on practice, you grow, and the way the depth you understand the Dhamma will be deeper. So, any questions? Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Versha asked me to actually talk to you about the Buddha, the huge Buddha that's coming, about the jewels, the treasures going into the Buddha. It will be done next year. So there will be three things being put into, not three things, three categories of things. The first is the Buddha. We are going to put one little Buddha into the big Buddha. So it signifies the three jewels, okay? The Buddha, so I have the Buddha already. So, and then the second is the Dhamma. Dhamma, that means teachings, his teachings. So I'm asking people to write Heart Sutra. So if you would like to actually write in English, I would welcome A4 size paper, not too thick so that I can roll it up, with calligraphy or whatever. Try your best to write very, very slowly and mindfully. You can write many, but I will only choose one from one person, because I have about, how many? I think I have about 2,000 copies from 3,000 people. So English ones, I think I haven't got any yet. So you folks are welcome to actually chip in, and deadline is maybe end of the year, okay? And then, of course, you cannot put the Sangha in there, right? But we are using jewels, gems to actually to put in there. Gems, that means precious stones. So if you have some precious stones like amethyst, there are 7 kinds of precious stones. Off the head, I really don't know all of them in English. Let me find out and I will tell you next week. So if you have one of those precious stones, real precious stones, and you want to actually donate and put it into the Buddha, into the body of the Buddha forever, as long as Polam meditation vihara lasts, it will stay in there. So you are welcome to give, okay? So, all right? Okay. So we will dedicate our merits. May these blessings extend to all, that we with all the other living beings together will attain the Buddha way. We have this good thought arise on our mind. May more and more people will encounter the words of the Buddha, study them, practice them, and liberate themselves from their own difficulties, sufferings, miseries, and be ultimately happy, peaceful. Okay.